And I think there's a lot of us that, at some point we might spend some time, we might get a bit of a nudge about doing something exciting. And I'd be curious to know, what were some of the first actions you took back then that nudged you
Sure.
into the path that you are now on?
Sure. Well, I'll just take us right back to that sidewalk. And so instead of walking 3 feet above after I heard disseminate spiritual wisdom, my feet hit the ground and I started thinking about it. And so that's a different quality of mind. I started, la, 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 and I thought, well, I could go into books, but oh no, there's already book publishing companies, and to college, the books were, 500 pages, 1,000 pages. I don't want to be, okay, I could go into video. No, my parents, they watched so much television. It was so deadening, having dinner on a TV tray, whatever. I don't want to go into video. Audio. Oh, I already have a radio show. People already like my little Live from Planet Earth interview program. And each week I have a dubbing deck and I just hit, double time, make a copy, and I sell 4 or 5 copies a week. Smallest cottage business anyone ever had. 40, 50, $10 each, 40, $50 a week of my little interview show on cassette. And I had seen that there was such a thing as high-speed cassette duplicating equipment. And I was like, that's amazing. You can go to a conference and you can see them, they chain together 6, 7 machines and you can make 15 copies in 3 minutes, something like that. And I thought, well, this is great. I'm going to start with audio. I already have my home dubbing deck. Now I'm going to buy these other decks. I'm going to go out. I'm going to record these workshops. I want to be at these workshops anyway. And I love being there, as I mentioned to you, Jason, in the back of the room with headphones on. I didn't have to pay. I made a deal with the author. Once I cover my costs of being here over the weekend, I'll give you a portion of the revenue I take in from selling the cassettes. I'll also give you this professional recording submaster that I've created, and then I collected on a wall all of the cassette masters. So at that point in time, we're fast forwarding, doing time travel together, like 3 years, 1988, and I had maybe 300 little cassette masters labeled on a wall. And I met someone who had developed catalogs, and I brought him into the office and I said, look at all these masters. And he said, Tammy, you're sitting on a gold mine. And I said, that's not a gold mine. It's a bunch of unedited cassette masters. And he said, we have to treat each one as if it was a standalone information program. Nothing else is required, just this program. And I'll develop the catalog for it. And this will be a catalog of audio learning for people who have never had a catalog like that. And I was like, look, if you're going to develop the catalog and you're going to put a little cover on each one of these, I want to edit them properly, because I'd learned to edit in public radio. And so I was like, I want to edit each program so that it fits the beautiful cover you're going to make. So there aren't like weird bathroom breaks or beeping sounds or God knows what. And so I started editing the programs. He developed the catalog, and that's how we got Sounds True off the ground.
That's so cool. And for some reason, I'm thinking about that like documentary with Steve Jobs when they're like in the garage making their first personal computers. But in this space, you seem to have been the pioneer doing it for that area. How did you? I want to go back to a specific story. Who was one of the first seminars you went to, and how did you pitch it to
Sure.
the author to let you come in for free to record their event?
Sure. Well, here's a good example would be Ram Dass. And it's Ram Dass speaking in front of 2,000 people in an auditorium in Denver. And we have a little pink sheet of paper that has on it, had to be pink. No, just kidding. It just happened to be pink. It had on it other things we had recently recorded. And then it had an 800 number and a little order form you could tear off, and you could get a copy of the program you just heard. You could wait in line, and there we were, me and my elves making copies. If you didn't want to, we'd ship it to you for free, no shipping charge. And it was like $15 or something. And we'd walk away. First of all, about 100 people would wait in line, and we would get them, their copy. So we walked away with, $1,500, $2,000. We'd get a bunch in the mail afterwards, and people just threw the form at us with $15 and said, ship it to me. And so we would go home, we'd fill all these orders. We started developing our now what's called snail mail list, but it was our mailing list. And just like people value their email names, this was our, minted, our mailing list that we sent the catalog to in time. And so that's an example. And before you know it, we had an archive of Ram Dass recordings, which we continue to sell to this day.
That's so cool. That's, uh, you were in the grind. You were getting this off the ground. You're showing up at these events. And like
I was carrying those cassette duplicators. I remember when my mom saw the business I was in, she was like, "That's very bad for your back," and I was like, "Look, I have to carry these machines. Who else is going to carry them?"
Oh my God. And when you went to Ram Dass, and like, how did you reach him to be like, "Hey, we're going to come and record and start doing," is it like sales at the back of the room?
Well, remember when I mentioned that I had this interview show on
That's
community
right.
public radio? I would call a couple months. I'd see the ad, and I'd call the organizer, and I'd say, "Hey, I can get Ram Dass on the show in advance and help you promote what you're doing and sell all your tickets. But I also want to let you know of this service that I've got. And let me tell you about Sounds True's on-site cassette duplication service. And it doesn't cost you anything, and you get a portion of the revenue. Yay!"
Where, like, that's genius. Where did you get like, did you just, how did you start thinking like this is the best business model? Like, had you tried stuff? Had you seen others do it? Like, because this is genius.
It was, honestly, it was more serendipity than genius, meaning I wanted to do, and this is, I think, I know your show is called Selling with Love, and there's nothing wrong with the word selling. It's just a word. But the word that I like more is maybe something like letting ourselves be led by our love. And so something like that, like letting ourselves be led by our love. Our love is contagious. Before you know it, we're selling with love, persuading with love, magnetizing with love, living with love. So I loved learning. I wanted to learn from Ram Dass because I wanted to understand what the heck happened to me when I went to India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, started meditating, and ended up not speaking practically for 5 months upon my return. I had been so deeply rewired by that experience. I really wanted to understand how timelessness was going to meet and express through me in time. So I was turned on inside, passionate about learning. That's how I got in touch with Ram Dass. That's why the show was good, because I was really into it, really interested, really genuine.
Yeah.
Then I had this money, and I realized I wanted to use this money to be of service and make more money because I needed to pay my rent. So, okay, fine. Like, okay, what do I want to do? I want to go to these events anyway. I want to be there. And then I just remembered this flash, this image of seeing this high-speed duplicating equipment and just being like, wow, that's so interesting. Who would have thought you could duplicate a cassette like that? 15 of them in 3 minutes. And then for whatever reason, I had this thought that it was a tool of the revolution, if you will. You could fit a cassette in your back pocket. It's just a cassette. But what could it contain? It could contain so much incendiary spiritual teachings that you would go on fire when you heard it. It could be that powerful. So all of that kind of just fit the pieces together.
Sounds like you like had the printing press moment for audio right at the right time with the right messages, and it's so cool to go back into that initial journey. Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.